I forgot to get a picture. Anyways, so wasn't that amazing? So we have another panel coming up. Now, that was, I have been booking myself back to back because we have so much information. And I got to tell you, we have an amazing team in the background. But when you go through this much work, to actually put a conference together, I don't want to waste a single minute. So if you have to get up, or if you had to do, get a glass of water, go check some emails, just know that the pass holders for the entire summit, we are offering those for our pass holders, the entire replay version. So you can go back and see the stories that you might have missed, that you might have had go take care of business and come back to. So don't worry about it. Breathe. We've got more coming. Okay, I had to breathe too. And we have our Support Her panel. Now, I have, in 2018, I launched Support Her, and it was at the height of the Me Too movement, and out of complete respect for everything that movement has done to give women a voice, okay? And there's men out there that, oh my God, thank gosh for Me Too, because they are definitely put in their place, and it's created worldwide awareness for an issue that was really needing to be said. So I have also decided, as a mom of a boy, I really support strong male positive leaders. And I truly believe that to move the needle, that we have to raise the profiles of the male champions that support her in their networks, communities, and workplaces. We want to forget about those that don't support. We're not going to support them in our businesses. We're not going to support them in our communities, and we're certainly not going to vote for them. So the ones that support women, they're going to work together to help and support women, to advance women in all areas. So it's my pleasure to be welcoming 3 amazing men that are Support Hers. So hello, Calvin. Hello, Abe. Hello, Les.
Hi, thank you.
How are you all? Now, you guys got on really quick. I didn't even have time to do your intros. Now I'm going to say your intros and your bios are like ginormous, okay? Just like the ladies, but I want to just say, Calvin Chrustie, you're the co-founder of CC Strategic Solutions, which is a boutique consulting firm specializing in coaching and advising in the area of negotiation and conflict management. Now, I'm going to skip to the area that's really important. You have got such amazing experience in that area. Includes negotiating in war zones with terrorists, political leaders, and the highest levels of government, business leaders, etc. During your years of career with the federal RCMP, you've had several leadership positions, and in terms with negotiating in conflict management. So you were also a professional hostage negotiator responsible for negotiating with terrorist groups involved in kidnapping Canadians and other citizens. Super impressive. And you and I, Cal, spoke, and we connected over cyber stuff, and we've had many conversations over the past few months. I feel like you've been in my network for many more years, and we know lots of people, and you've introduced me to Cameron Shell, who talked yesterday and just blew it out of the water big. And so I want to say the reason why I wanted you part of the Support Her, because number one, you are a Support Her. I'm going to get into a phone call conversation that we had after, about a little knock at my door and a request from you to me. But I want to tell you that right now, as we're pivoting and going forward with our new normal, which is going to be really exciting, conflict negotiations is going to be very key. I want you to touch a little bit about that today, right? Because as women, we have to ask for things. In this morning session, they're like, we have to prepare pitches to ask for promotions. We have to be able to be good negotiators. So I want you to talk a little bit about how we can prepare women to talk about asking for what they need and negotiating. Okay. Abe, let me just introduce you as well. So Abe, so great to see you live. We've conversed, but it hasn't been a live. You're the CEO of Wellness Innovate. You're an MBA, CMT, CPHSA. I don't know how many more alphabet letters there are, but you've done a lot, Abe, to say the least. You're the coach's coach, an entrepreneur, professional speaker, international best-selling author, and a high-performance leadership coach. So you're also the president of a certification process, and you have led people through tens of millions of people. And I just have to read, your bio is so long, and the recommendation was Angela from the CEO of Emerge Agency. She says, you need to have Abe on. He is rock solid, and he's going to be great for your audience. And I thought, you know what, he'd make a perfect panelist for Support Her. So thank you so much, Abe, for coming. I'd love you to touch on the area of your expertise, which is health and wellness, because as we know, health and wellness is super important right now. It's kind of moved up from a pillar somewhere here to a pillar kind of at the top, right? Because we have to take care of ourselves. So I'll get you to focus on that a little bit in the discussion as well. And then Les, welcome. You and I were another connection through one of my connections, Deb Milka Miles. And she says, you know what, you need to reach out to see what Les is doing. Les, you are the managing partner for Caldwell Partners, and you're all about relationship building. Your business is 20 years with executive searches and human resource experiences. You have a broad perspective of the most pressing talent issues in executive management, and you particularly focus on boards and serving executive positions for public companies and equity-backed enterprises with energy, industrial, retail, and financial service sectors. So I hope you're listening in the background, or you had the thing open when we talk about how we can actually move the needle with some of our retailers to provide shelf space for some of our women-owned businesses. So I'll dive into that a little bit later, but I want to say you were all chosen for a purpose in your areas of expertise. Well, you look on paper and go, what do they have in common? Well, you all support her. So I'm going to open it up right there to say welcome, and let's dive in. So Cal, you and I had a conversation in the very beginning. COVID has impacted us greatly. Soon into COVID, there was an announcement about another tragedy in Nova Scotia. And so maybe you can just start about sharing, you know, the nudge to kind of go why you reached out to me and what that conversation was
about. You picked a tough intro topic.
I'm just jumping right in there.
Only because it's super emotional for me. So this is not how I expected to start, but I'll power through here. Obviously, it was relative to the loss of a police officer in Nova Scotia, and one of my very good friends that was managing the incident, and made it particularly difficult because my current spouse and partner is a police officer as well, and so you did a tough one, putting me on that one right off the get-go. But anyways, obviously there's a lot of criticism towards the RCMP in that. And the commanding officer of Nova Scotia was my former supervisor and manager, and I had a ton of respect for her. And I knew not only in terms of the hurt and trials and tribulations that they were having as a result of that, and being a partner with a single mother who's a police officer as well, it had a kind of more significant effect for me, aside from knowing all the people that were involved in the incident and that. So I reached out to you, just reviewing and having some other unrelated discussions about women that were heroes, thinking that here was a woman whose reputation was stellar, who was an unbelievable act of courage in terms of not freezing, not withdrawing, but doing the complete opposite by engaging with the threat, to save the lives of others. And I don't know if the details are all out in the media, but was basically executed in the course of the duty, and it was an execution, not just a shooting. And so that's why I reached out to you. So that's I thought she was a superhero, and you know, I've worked with a lot of different people and know a lot of different people, but I thought, you know, it was, you know, at least for 2020 and, you know, consistent with what you guys do, I thought it was somebody deserving of respect and acknowledgement. So that was our first conversation, really. That was a tough one to
It
start.
was one of our very first conversations. We had only had maybe an hour-long conversation pulled over at side of the road, and you know, it was like, let's get this done now.
Yeah.
And that was the second follow-up conversation. And I have to say that I knew right at that moment where your heart was and where your mind was for supporting women, because it struck me as, yes, we have Woman of Inspiration awards, and you're like, I didn't really even talk a whole lot about that.
Yeah.
But you've done a little bit of research and you remembered that I had an awards program. And one of the awards that we actually have out of 25 is Unsung Heroes, where we recognize women in, you know, the RCMP officers, the police, the paramedics, the fire department. And consistently, we've had women represented in those areas. And it's been great, great, great to be able to acknowledge the unsung heroes. But what I didn't realize at that time, and, you know, I don't think everybody realized, that true act, if there's any, and we talked about that, of heroism. Constable Heidi Stevenson, like, her name fits right underneath it. Like, you know, I just I was so compelled to say yes right away, and going, yes, we want to recognize and honor her heroism, and a woman in a leadership role, and her heroism that there's no words to describe how much that's raised the profiles for everybody. She leaves a legacy of something so impactful, and I want to be able to recognize her for her family, for her loved ones, for everybody that's still grieving, and your community that love that we're in her close community. So for Women of Inspiration 2020, that the Constable Heidi Stevenson Unsung Hero Award is going to be a way that we can represent her legacy. And so I thought that was really important. And I invited you because I'm sorry I threw that out as the very first thing to talk about, but we have so much to talk about. And I wanted to dive in with that and set the framework for, you know, just how committed you are and how much you respect women and women in service. And you see it all, right? So thank you. I know that was a tough one for you. I got it out of the way. I ripped off the Band-Aid, Cal.
Yeah, thank you.
Strategically, like you taught me.
Sorry about staggering through that.
No, it was great, because if you were to suppose say, Monica, that's going to be really hard, and if I would have waited to the end, you would have been going, when is she going to talk about it? So I just kind of surprised you. So I hope that was okay.
Yeah, good.
Awesome. So heroism and women and supporting and championing women is so incredibly important. And I have to say that in order to do that, we have to start being leaders, talking about it visibly, like you three all are, supporting women around us, so that the others can say, okay, I get it. I see what you're doing. I can do that. I support them anyways, but I guess I need to be more visible. So Abe, maybe I'll get you to talk about, you know, and I know your industry, mental health, and not even just health and wellness. I mean, really, is so important for women right now.
Yeah, I mean, and thanks for having this conversation, and you know, Cal, thanks for sharing that as well. You know, what the research shows is that entrepreneurs and you know, owners, you know, operators, small, medium-sized businesses, that there was a pre-COVID a mental health crisis for these folks, right? And then COVID hit, and we know that COVID has not been kind to these folks. But for women, the research shows that whatever the men are experiencing, the women are experiencing it more acutely. And so what we're talking about is incidents of stress and depression. We're talking about extremely high levels of anxiety, along with all of the other sort of harassment and bullying and other types of incidents that occur. And so, you know, for women who are in roles of leadership broadly, that this is a significant challenge, because, you know, not only are they a source of so much economic activity in a positive way, and so much creativity and innovation, meeting needs, but on top of that, they have to wrestle with some of these challenges. And so we spend a lot of time working on supporting mental health. And I think for me, it really comes from my wife, because my wife and my mom. My wife is a tremendous entrepreneur who's doing amazing things in a male-dominated industry, the industry of IT. And I can see every day, what she has to go through to thrive. And so I'm proud to be in the background supporting her as much as I can, for sure.
Amazing. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of those strategies, how we can support each other. What are the signs to be looking for people that are really struggling right now? I can't even, another conversation, on a panel earlier, 4 weeks ago now, so we've been doing virtual panels, was the loss of lives in a family in Edmonton. And, that really struck the whole community, the business community. So what can we do to sort of see, normal, loving, kind people that are community leaders, how we can sort of look to each other and go, okay, I see something that's not right. They're disappearing. They're not communicating. Let's talk a little bit about that piece, because I'd love your insight. So maybe I'll give you a couple minutes to collect your thoughts there. So Les, you've been doing these panels, inviting some, and you've been elevating some female leaders from some very high influential roles. And so I would just love to find out, how you've been able to do and why it's important to you to support women.
Great, thank you. And first off, thank you for my softball question, whereas Calvin's was the hard one. So thank you for that, and thanks for the opportunity and calling us amazing at the beginning. I'm sure Calvin and Abe are. I'm just doing my job, and that is I'm an executive recruiter. Some people call us headhunters. And I've got a small team that I look after, or I work with in Calgary, where I'm based, and travel all over, or at least we used to travel all over. I think we're all wishing that we could get back to that. But what we do is we help our clients find new leaders when they're going through a transformation or going through some kind of change, or somebody retires or leaves. We help them regularly to find new people to come in. And I would say that on average, our clients will say the most important thing that we're looking for is talent. Mm. And then if that person happens to have some kind of diversity to their candidacy, that's a bonus. And so from our standpoint, we're always looking for great talent. And, frankly, what we find is that when you compare on average men versus women, when they're considering a new opportunity, oftentimes we'll find that men will exaggerate their talent a little bit more. Whereas women on average, and I'm averaging things out here, but women on average will maybe underestimate their talent a little bit more. And so our job when we're presenting candidates to our clients, a really important thing for us is to help the client understand and see the real person. And so when the person is exaggerating, we help them understand that this person is really not as good as what they say they are. And also similarly, when a person is better than what they say they are, our job is really to help showcase why we feel that to be the case. Because, candidly, I'd say that more often than not, there's a lot more capability than there is prior experience for some of the senior level roles that we might be looking for in some people. And I think it's our job and it's incumbent on us for a lot of our clients to help them look for capability and not just the been there, done that experience. And so that's some of the things that we do, and I can get into that a little bit more later.
Love that. Now I want to just touch base before we move on to that about the capability versus experience, because I've also just done panels where, and we talk about, so there's companies, we've got, you know, female entrepreneurs, but as their businesses grow and scale, they're going to have teams. They're going to need, you know, to reach out. They're going to have their own wellness department. They're going to hire negotiator training, you know, to go get those bids or those opportunities, right? And work with strategic partners. They're going to have executive searches to find the right people for those spots. Because as you know, as an entrepreneur, you're the visionary of the company normally, and you have to wear all hats. But at a certain level, when you need to scale and grow, you need to go, okay, I need to put those hats on other people and let them carry the ball. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, right? So I think what's really important is that they understand the capability versus the experience thing. And I've talked to so many leaders that have worked their way up from, like, say, Tara Wilson, who's a senior vice president and general manager, Tara, if you're listening, of Income Access, who started off as a data room entry person. And she worked up all the way her career into the senior vice president and general manager position. But somebody gave her a baton and they said, oh, we have this great position. And she says, oh, well, you know, I'll see if I know anybody. And they're like, no, we are thinking about you. And she's like, honestly, she said, I had to sit back, and she said, I had to think about whether I was going to take the baton. Simply because she wasn't sure that she had experience for that job. So as you talk about capabilities and experiences, so she did come back and she did take the baton, and it took her a couple of months, but she is driving the Ferrari around. She does not own a Ferrari, but she is well in control of that car. She's well in control of the position, but she took that on, but it took her a leap to say, okay, I can take that, I can do that. But I think it's really important for women to understand that capability versus experience, and then be able to, as you say, showcase it. And so thank you for bringing that up. It's really important, because that is a great topic that we could talk all day long on just itself. So thank you. So I'm going to start opening up the panel questions here. So what role, gentlemen, do you each feel that you can play to move the needle for equality, diversity, and inclusiveness? I'll let anybody start. Abe, you look like you're ready to jump in.
You know, it's an interesting question, because, you know, most of my career I've worked with extremely high performing female leaders, and it's funny because I don't know that was ever strategic. So I think part of it is are you creating an atmosphere of safety, right? And when I mean safety, I mean that in the truly sort of psychological sense, right? Because you know, Google did some research on their highest performing teams across all of their business units, and they've got a lot of employees, you know, 70,000 employees in 50 different countries. So talk about diversity. But what they found was that the #1 trait of their highest performing teams was this idea that people could be safe together. I can be myself. I can offer my ideas. I don't need to be afraid of judgment. I don't need to be afraid that I'm going to be criticized or put down. And I think, you know, just as a man, we are, I thought what Les said was interesting, that men tend to inflate, and you just have to go down to a pub on a Friday night and see that happen, you know. And I think that puts other people at risk, right? You know, if I'm sitting there telling everybody how great I am, then immediately everyone is comparing themselves to that individual. And so I think, you know, we as men, we can absolutely create a safer environment by doing a lot less talking, a lot more listening, you know, a lot more pulling out, you know, the strength, the capability, the capacity of others, particularly women, rather than trying to advertise and tell everybody how much capacity we have, you know. And I hope that's helpful, but that's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind.
I think that's very important to do, you know, and that sort of helps women actually know that they're valued. I think probably one of the biggest things as people, that we all want to be valued. And if we have that confidence, you know, we're unstoppable. But you have to believe, and you have to, you know, take action on your belief. But having the value, if somebody values you, you believe in you even more.
Yeah. And I think you have to have a strong sort of, and I don't know, I hope I don't get blacklisted, but you have to have a strong sort of no asshole policy. Like, you know, when you do see people doing the wrong thing, whatever that is, you can't have a sort of a culture that hides that or that excuses it, you know. And I don't necessarily mean we have to get involved in public shaming, but I just think that you have to make it really clear that we're going to protect people, and particularly women, right? That we're going to make sure that we're strong in that regard. And I think that a lot of organizations hurt themselves when they don't do that, because women have some of the best ideas by far. They have some of the most important collaborative skills. And so if you haven't created an environment where you're making, causing them to feel safe, you're actually losing a big business opportunity. And I don't want to just put it in capitalist terms, but I think it's important. A lot of times companies don't change until they realize that they have to, because of the economics, right? And so I think that's an important consideration.
Unless I'll get you to jump in on that one, because you know, dollars to donuts. Dollars to donuts, that's true. It really is true. It's definitely increasing the bottom line of a company to have women on your boards and on your executive teams. Correct?
Yeah, no, it really is. There's a couple stats that you can point to. McKinsey did a study, and there's an actual statistic that gender diverse companies are 21% more likely to outperform their peers over the long term. And actually, if you add in some ethnic diversity there, it actually jumps up to 35%.
Wow.
And then also Catalyst did a study that said, you know, companies with women on their boards outperform their peers over time as well. But I think you know, the question that you asked around what role can men play, well, one of the first things that, you know, needs to happen is they need to believe it. You know, it's one thing to you know, sort of try and take it on. But if they don't genuinely believe it and know that it is true, that you have diversity and it will make things and make you better as an organization or as an enterprise, doesn't matter how much lip service you play, or you know, putting a token person you know, onto into a role, it's not going to help until you actually truly know and you get it. And if you start there, you know, that's going to be, you know, really helpful. But I think something that might be helpful for, you know, some people on the line to understand is, you know, men oftentimes don't even think about it because we're busy competing with each other. You know, so the men on the boards are competing for airtime with each other. They're competing, you know, to try and move up. You know, and they don't look at it as men versus women or men versus, you know, ethnic diversity. They're looking at it as, well, I'm chasing to get to that next level. And so oftentimes, you know, we don't even think about that kind of stuff. So, you know, if we can start thinking about it and getting there, then we can maybe, you know, turn our look to how can we do this together better as a team or as a group.
So my next question, I just wrote this down because it came and I don't want it to go away before we stop talking about how important it is it, and I think you may all be able to answer this one, is it for that genuine buy-in as a leader of an organization, where do you believe that falls ultimately? Where do you think that dribbles down from? Is it the CEO of the company?
Well, personally, from my standpoint, it starts with the board. You know, the board has to believe. And this is all right across the board or the board of advisors, or depending on the organization, the stakeholder community. And then, of course, it all trickles down right from the top, whether that's the president, the CEO, the managing director, the office manager, whoever that may be.
Awesome. Well, great. No, I've seen the effects of it happening. I know I can share that a couple years ago, we had the awards, and one of the award recipients, nominees at the time, she was with the Calgary Zoo. And I am happy to give a shout out to the Calgary Zoo because they rallied around her leadership. she said, you know, we have a program in place, but you know, it's just kind of something that's there and we all believe it, but we weren't really taking action on it. And so the awards was actually an opportunity through the awards, through nominating her. And it was somebody outside of her team that had nominated her. But when the zoo found out that she'd been nominated, they're like, fantastic, let's rally around and support her. But it came from Claude, the CEO of the zoo, and it trickled through that they support her. And within a 2 weeks turn, it was like somebody was drinking Kool-Aid, and they're like, I can't believe it. And at the awards, they had like 2 tables full of their leaders supporting the leaders, and how they were, it was just an amazing, men and women, of course, attending. But those examples where it's there, it's like a fancy little thing on your team board, but unless you put it into action, it kind of just stays there, right? So anyways, I just had to share that and plug the zoo, because I think they did a great job with that, and they do truly support their female leaders. Cal, do you have anything to add in regards to support?
Well,
You've worked with top executives all over the world, and I'm sure in different countries, and you probably have a really unique perspective of Canada versus US versus, you know, underdeveloped countries that are, you know, got lots of problems.
well, I'll just say that I think in terms of how you can help, and I think Abe and Les both, you know, gave different examples. So I think there's a whole number of opportunities where help can be, but I probably only in terms of my own experience can kind of go, hey, how am I trying to help? And that is, as you've alluded to, I've spent, you know, 25 years in and out of war zones, conflict zones, and dealing with tremendous adversity and challenges, dealing with extremely difficult people and situations, and seeing horrific kind of examples, you know, probably understatement, you know, in terms of unfairness and that. And what I try to do intentionally versus just by opportunities is try to make myself available and take the schools of hard knock lessons that I've learned dealing with difficult situations, and try to share those. And you know, whether they be with, you know, youth. You know, I was teaching a university for the last couple of years, and kind of going, hey, you know, I've got these school of hard knock lessons in terms of how do you deal with difficult people, difficult situations, through negotiation processes and dialogue. You know, from taking those lessons from dealing with a terrorist to kind of going, hey, I'm going to, you know, help the future youth, to whether it be assisting and supporting initiatives with, you know, Canadian business leaders, and working with them in light of what I see as a more difficult global environment to work in, you know, through what I often refer to as global polarization that impacts diplomats, businesses, and, you know, all forms of leaders, to you know, working with women's groups like I did last year with Cyber Wayfinder, which was a cybersecurity professional group of female mid-level managers, and trying to kind of share some of those lessons and that. So I think it really depends on, you know, what that individual can offer, and then defining, you know, what they can offer, you know, to assist and support this. And I've tried to do it with not only you know, on the gender issue, but, you know, other future leaders, you know, like youth, and other, you know, Indigenous communities, et cetera, that probably can assist and support, you know, their initiatives by doing it. So that's kind of my personal kind of vision on it, at least.
Oh my goodness, I am like replaying in my mind here. I've got it all planned out, Cal. So after we wrap up, we're going to start something where we can, you know, help and support women deal with tough crisis situations. And I mean, oh my God, like really put together a program from your knowledge base with dealing with terrorists. Not much difference than sometimes what if some women's situations that we deal with, I gotta say, right? So let's take that knowledge and wrap it up and see what we can do to equip them with the tools to negotiate, to be in, like, you know, situations that are volatile and uncertain, and equip them with the tools to help them succeed. Ask for that job, take on that baton.
I'm going to be super respectful to my colleagues here, but you know, hearing Abe's focus on health and less on relationships building, and I didn't know that was kind of both your background. Those are like two key things, because the only way that I was able to achieve it and sustain it and have the resilience to deal with it was like maintaining my health, focusing my health during the process. And it was all about relationship building and displaying respect throughout the processes. So including those two guys in it would be also interesting.
It's already down 3 pillars. There was a reason I kind of fused this together, right? And so the people in the audience are going, okay, I finally see the dots, but I'm looking at the connections for each of you together to work together, but I'm also looking at the value that you're bringing together to support women. So we got lots of work to do after the summit wraps up. So I don't know what you're doing for the summer, but you know, September would be a great launch of something, don't you think?
100%.
Did I say December or the fall? No, I meant the fall, even if I said December. Anyways.
Monica, there's something that I think would be really interesting to just talk about here. And Cal just did a really good example of acknowledging and supporting just now, you know, Abe and Les.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, you know, I've seen with really successful women is they've earned and instilled a sense of self-confidence, that when you've got the self-confidence, it really builds on itself. So where do you get the self-confidence? Well, the self-confidence oftentimes comes from the acknowledgement, the support, the accolades, you know, the award programs, the things like you're doing right now in terms of supporting her. I'll give you an example. We run the Canada's Top 40 Under 40 program. And one of the things that's fascinating to watch is these are young people that are doing incredible things, and then, you know, they get the award. And oftentimes what they'll say, without exception, I'd encourage you to go and watch some of the, you know, the testimonials from people that win these awards, is they say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm part of this group. This is unbelievable. I don't, you know, I never really believed in myself. But then when you interview them another 10 years later, many of them, their careers have really, really skyrocketed. And you ask them why their careers have gotten to this point. And they'll say, you know what? It was actually that award that I won at, you know, whether it's Top 40 or whatever it is. Yeah. And that award made me believe that I belonged, that I was there. And so, you know, I think, you know, what we as men, or not just men, what we as a society can do to really help is to continue to celebrate and acknowledge all of these great successes, because that's going to continue to build, and it's going to encourage people to take additional chances so that that capability turns into experience.
Okay, so I didn't pay you, by the way, to say all that great stuff. I'm just saying you just sold our program, because I was replaying. Okay, I know exactly what they're saying. I was valued. I didn't know I had that power. I had no idea that people were watching me. I had one woman, and I'm going to say, Deb, if you're watching or listening, you know I'm going to tell this story. We asked for 2 minimum reference letters for the awards package. Okay, you have to go and get 2. 2 is a minimum. Our selection committee was going, like, we were scrolling through, and they said, Monica, we have 42 letters of reference for Deb Milka-Miles. 42, because I had coached her and saying, okay, I want everybody to go out and I want you to ask your whole network, would you mind supporting me? I've just been nominated for Woman of Inspiration. She took that advice, sent it to her entire network, and she got 42 letters. And she says, you know what, I didn't even need to win the award, because the letters that I got back from the people that I'd done business with from like 20 years ago, she goes, I had no idea that I was the best manager for that organization that he's ever seen, from the CEO. He sent her a letter, and she goes, I wish I would have known that then. She goes, because I've always kind of, that would have helped me kind of get through that other. So it's about confidence. It's about knowing your value, knowing you're worth it. And yes, the value of awards and acknowledgement is not to be underestimated. every single person, as we even got on this morning, Siobhan, she says, you know what? She started listing all of these things that have happened to her profile and her leadership and her visibility in just since October 2019. It is off the charts. So yes, I think that is really important. I'm so glad that you did bring that up, Les. And you can't celebrate the accomplishments of women enough. So thank you for bringing that up. It wasn't on our questions, but I'm so glad it went there and that I didn't even have to pay you to do that. Just kidding. Anyways, so thank you. It just lifts me up to hear stuff like that, because I love to see that other people can see what I see, and that as leaders in the community like you are, that you're such big champions to helping women succeed. So thank you. So now I've got to talk about sort of COVID-19. You know, moving that needle, of course, it's been a hard, it's a hard needle to lift and to move. COVID's placed a lot of challenges on that. Like, honestly, we were talking yesterday, and I was talking with the group, the panel, and we were talking about, actually it was an interview that Dana was asking me. She goes, I remember on a call I was saying, you know, I was feeling kind of stuck, like everybody needs to pause. Everybody was really supposed to just go quiet. And you said, no, we're going to put the pedal on the gas pedal, and we're going to go. This is not a time to pause. You got to go. You got to pivot. You got to start thinking about coming out already. And she says, thank you for that, because it enabled me to do that. But I look at that because it was quiet for a long time. And I mean, I kept up my calls. I kept up reaching out to people, talking about celebrating women. Hey, let's talk about the positive sides of things. We can't let go of that. But what was your take on sort of that really strong movement of helping support women, and then COVID came and it kind of ripped the carpet underneath, and it kind of took the power away. Am I the only one feeling that or seeing that? No?
No, I mean,
have you seen that as well? Like, I just thought, you know, we can't stop talking about this. I understand there's a pandemic and we're coming on this stuff, but we work hard. We can't lose our ground.
No, I mean, I think it's actually, you're hitting the nail on the head. They call it a she session, right? Not just a recession. And there's a big reason for that. And that's because, you know, whatever men are going through right now, or whatever they think they are going through right now, women are experiencing it at a much more acute level. And, you know, job loss has been greater amongst women. Business failures has been greater. And what that means is that the mental health implications are profound. So, you know, everyone out there is talking, you know, like public health folks about a second wave. But the mental health experts are talking about a second wave that's going to be a mental health pandemic. And, you know, yes, it'll hit men, but it's going to hit women perhaps disproportionately hard. And the sad thing is that, you know, like you're saying, so many advances have been made, still a lot of work to be done, but now everybody's focus is on, you know, let's sort out this pandemic, and that's appropriate, but I'm not sure that it's helped the cause that we're talking about here very much at all. It might even set it back.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that. That was, you know, and this is actually one of the this is the second conversation I've had about that, and so I want to start talking more about it, because we do have to keep the foot on the gas pedal in order for that to happen. Otherwise, Les, you're going to go around and looking for some, you know, they're going to say, Les, we'd love to have, you know, a female represent our company to sit at that board. And you're going to be like, oh gosh, you know, that went down. My portfolio is a little less, a couple of women. We want to keep that up, and even more so. So thank you so much, Abe. Les, what are your comments on that?
You know, at the same time that I agree with everything that both you've said and Abe have said, I also look, though, as COVID-19 as the great equalizer. So, you know, all of a sudden, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's working from home. So if there were challenges with commuting, or if there were challenges with home care, or if there were challenges with you name it, it ends up now that everybody, there are so many more people that are in the same boat that, you know, they have probably a similar chance at pivoting or transforming to make it better. So at the same time as, as I agree, I also think that there maybe becomes a little bit more opportunity to take advantage of the stall in a lot of things. So I'm not in any way taking away from, the cause may no longer be as loud and not as many ears to be able to hear this. But at the same time now there's, because there's so many people that are sort of stopped in deer in headlights, those really entrepreneurial and inspired and enlightened people have the opportunity to, I think, move faster because a lot of other people are maybe stuck.
Yes. And I love your perspective on that, because you are correct that we're all, it has leveled the playing field for sure on that. And I also see the opportunities for leaders to rise, where we're like wondering where the leaders are. It's almost like when you boil water and when you do gnocchi, it's in the bottom, but all of a sudden when it's like, actually no, that goes to the bottom, forget about that one. Anyways, you know what I'm trying to say is it's like something rises to the top when it's just like, it's all at the bottom, and then all of a sudden, pop, pop, pop. It's like popcorn. Let's just say popcorn. Leaders are popping out of everywhere because you never realize their strength until they kind of just naturally have the instinct to lead. So I think that's a really important thing too, is to look around at the leaders and kind of see the female leadership that's popping up, no pun intended, all over the place. So thank you for that perspective. That's really cool. I love to hear that. Cal, what are your comments on this one?
Well, I got lots, but I'll keep it to a minute. I mean, my whole, professional career has been, whenever there's a crisis, as others have ran away or avoided, I've ran towards it. And much like Les alluded to, not wanting to take away all the negative implications and consequences as to what's happened, I think it's created an opportunity and a space, and brought a lot of different issues up. And just before this call, I had a phone call from my former organization asking if I'd do a talk relative to some of the protest issues and some of the conflict issues relative to Black Lives Matter protests. And the person calling me was of an Indigenous background, and he said, "Hey, would you come, with your background and have a talk with us in terms of, doing like a training to the developmental type of thing in terms of, hey, how do you deal with these situations of conflict and crisis?" And I took him back. He says, "And would you share something with me? Because I got to go talk to this group today as to what you do." And I said, "Well, it actually goes back to like 15 years ago." I said, when I was in a room, I said, and it's the same lesson that I would probably try to articulate. And coincidentally, which was perfect timing in terms of refreshing my somewhat stagnant memory sometimes, was when I was met with a female Indigenous elder here in Canada relative to a conflict situation. And we were talking about values and the importance of values in terms of dealing with conflict. And she reminded me as I went, I can't remember the order I had the 5 values in my presentation, but I think compassion or something was at the top. I can't remember, but she got somewhat upset and challenging me in the room, and it was one of the best lessons I had. And she said, there's only one principle that is important in terms of dealing with difficult situations and difficult people and dealing with each other, and that's the principle of respect. There's no ranking. It's just respect and respect and respect are the 5 principles. And I think at this time, like Les alluded to, it's created, I think, a greater awareness for everybody. I think with current events, because everybody's emotions kind of escalating and the conflict in terms of society is increasing. And I think I think there's a significant opportunity to have more dialogue about it. So yes, it's probably set some things back, but I think it's created some time and space for some of these conversations that we never had time for before.
Thank you for that. I love the importance. I wrote this down because I think we should put that into the program, guys. Was the importance of values when dealing with conflict or crisis. I know that we've talked earlier with some of our success stories. Karen Stewart, she has this amazing way that she does, her planning for her years and her goals, and her values are always consistently education, at the highest levels. But does everybody actually know what their own personal core values are? We may have them for the companies, but do you know what your personal core values are? And if you don't know that piece is, then how can you actually deal with the conflict, right? So I wrote that down, and yeah, I think that should be in our program that we're building, right, gentlemen? And very important. We'll have that piece to it. Gosh, you guys are full of, I was going to say you're full of it, but you're full of information. It's awesome. I love talking about this. Okay, so let's move to mentorship. Okay, another really, really top subject. I know at the height of the Me Too, I had read so the Me Too movement in 2018 is when we started SupportHER. What that did is, men were really nervous about mentoring women. And of course, 5% of women in top leadership roles. Well, how do you think they got there? Well, they had male mentors and advisors and coaches that helped support them on their journey to make sure that they paved the path for them, right? So all of a sudden, Me Too was like, I had a lot of men talk to me and said, we're really nervous about, kind of, we don't really know what to do. We don't want to be put in this situation. We love and respect them, but it became it was hard. It was a really hard, and I think it's gotten better. But it was a really challenging period of time for men to actually even say, yeah, I want to mentor somebody right now. They didn't want, if we're doing it by phone, that's great, but I'm not going to meet you in person. Otherwise, I don't want to be put in that situation. And honestly, at the round table in 2017, the advancement for women, one of the top barriers for women succeeding is access to mentors. And then Me Too happened. So that was already an issue. And then Me Too happened. And then all of a sudden the access to male mentors went down. So do you think that's still there? Or I'm just going to ask you because you're all men. Okay. And I know that I have lots of male mentors and there's no issues, but do you see, is it certain to be like men are like, yeah, I can mentor now again? Or did you see any sort of change in that? Like I was just going from statistics, but now I want to ask you personally, were you yourself, did the Me Too movement make you step back, or was it no change? Abe.
Well, I think, it certainly made me be much more thoughtful about how my interactions could be perceived, because I am, and if my wife was sitting right here, and the only reason she's not is because she's working, but she would tell you I'm a very expressive person, that not necessarily physically, I'm just, I'm a expressive person. That's who I am. And I think the challenge with that is, you can quite easily be misinterpreted perhaps. And you don't want that because unfortunately there was a climate where even just maybe, I don't know if accusation is too strong of a word, but even the suggestion was putting people into a very precarious position. And I think we would all understand the reasons for that. In other words, we need to protect people, but I think what it caused me to do is be much more thoughtful, also create more group opportunities for mentorship. So rather than one-on-one, what would it look like to work together, and appreciating that sometimes people need a little of the one-on-one. And I just think, thirdly, I'm not sure that we know now because of COVID and the whole focus on, sort of social distancing. So what will be interesting is to see as the lockdown eases and people get back to some semblance of normality, what ends up happening. But I do think, if nothing else, it will accelerate the trend towards more inclusive gatherings, and when we are together, not so much close proximity physically, which is a good thing, you know, and I think we would all agree that that's probably going to help everybody. So, you know, those are my thoughts. I think it is a little tricky, but we'll all have to navigate it, because I don't think it's appropriate to just say, well, I won't mentor you because you're a woman. I think that that's just as silly as, you know, maybe a senior female saying that to a younger man. I think that would be harmful as well. And I think a young man could learn a lot from a senior female who would be willing to mentor him, you know, so.
And so I'm going to give you an elbow bump right there, because now I'm doing elbow bumps instead of hugs. So that's great. I love the insight there. Les, what are your thoughts?
Well, maybe just a couple of quick observations. My personal coach and mentor for a number of years was a woman. I've been a coach and mentor to a young woman for the last 5 years. And frankly, I don't even think about gender when we're talking about, you know, these things. I think, yes, there's definitely, you know, some things to learn from and try to overcome that obviously are really important to have, you know, that male being, you know, the mentor. But at the end of the day, there's so many things that you can learn that are helpful, whether it's male or female. I think there's two things that one is really important is, you know, number one, making it more than just providing guidance and counsel, but also being that person that can open doors. And I'll give you an example. Just recently, I had a very, very high profile board chair and board director who called me up and said, Les, you need to do me a favor. I'm mentoring this young woman. I know you're working on this board search. I'd like for you to interview her for this role. And I know she's not qualified, but I'd like for you to at least get to know her. And frankly, I would have not interviewed her if it weren't for his recommendation, because she wasn't qualified, not even close. But when I spent time with her, I got to tell you, wow, this woman truly inspired me. And so, you know, in terms of that mentorship, I think it's a bigger word than just coaching and advising, but it's that person who is walking the talk and actually going out and making those introductions and helping out. And, you know, that's something, whether it's male or female, I think is just a more important part about mentorship.
Beautiful. I love that, because, you know, when we talk about how we can support her opening those doors, it doesn't cost a penny. It's an email. It's a phone call. Calvin, you did that to me. You opened up the door, and guess what? Now, you know, Cam, we're best friends. Not quite yet, but, you know, honestly, I really appreciate that. So, you know, I love that. And it's something that everybody can do, man or woman, for another person, but to help certainly advance women in business, help another woman. I love that circle of reciprocity. I know I'm at 1 o'clock. We talked a lot in this past hour, and I'm very, very grateful. I just want to go do a quick little roundtable. Any last remarks? And just say thank you to each and every one of you. I look forward to continuing the conversation, working on our program soon, because I think that would be super, super great. And I specifically invited you all together from diverse backgrounds, knowing that you all have your area of expertise and you're all supporters of women. But I also thought, you know, we have a Support Her program and we have a mentorship program, and soon to be part of our coaching program. So anyways, I look forward to working with you all in the future. Is there any last comments that you'd love to share with our audience before we wrap up? Abe, we'll start with you.
Well, I mean, thanks to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks to Cal. Thanks to Les. I mean, for the women out there, I mean, our company does focus on mental health. So I guess the biggest thing is, you know, the old saying, you know, put your own mask on first before you take care of others. And I think the biggest single thing we can do to impact our own mental health is to really do self-care, you know, take care of ourselves, love ourselves, invest in that. And that's going to give us sort of the inner resilience in order to face a lot of the external challenges that we all have.
Beautiful. Thank you. Les, yourself.
Well, congrats on this program, because as we talked about earlier, these the ability to support and recognize and enable people, I think, is a really important next step to get to that other point, which was believe in yourself. And as you believe in yourself, you start to sit straighter, you know, you start to position yourself better. In our world, we call it executive presence. If you've got that executive presence, it's going to go that much better for you. And it starts with that self-confidence.
Thank you. Cal?
Just thanks to all of you in terms of bless and yourself for the opportunity to share that. And if there's anything I can do for yourself and your group, as I've previously mentioned, you know, whatever, 25 years of the School of Hard Knocks, I'm more than willing to share it to help others. And it's kind of who I am. So if there's an opportunity to help, I'd love to help. And difficult times for everybody. And I think Abe said it best in terms of focusing on yourself and making sure that there's a balanced approach for your own well-being.
Well said, my new friends, and support hers. I'm going to take a little picture to capture the moment, and then we've got our women-owned panel in the green room ready to roll. So I appreciate your time, and say cheese.
Cheese.
All right. So thank you. It's been a blast, and I really appreciate you all taking your time out of your very busy days to share your thoughts and your wisdom to support women. I really appreciate it.
Great.
Have a great day, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. So how was the morning so far? I think we blew past the morning. We're at 1 o'clock now. So 1 o'clock is our next panel. A women-owned panel, but we're on the other side of the women-owned. We're talking about how